Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode on the Cerebral Cricketer podcast. Today we're very, very special guest on the show with Tom Scollay, who's played professional cricket for Middlesex and England between 2010 and 2012, representing the club in list A and T20 cricket, including at Lords. After his playing career, Tom returned to Australia and founded Cricket Mentoring, a coaching and mentoring platform designed to help cricketers improve their skills, mindset, and overall development. So it's a great honor to have you on the show, Tom.
Mate, thanks for having me. I know we've been trying to set this up for a while, so yeah, great to be on here.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, if you're a cricket fan, I think everyone definitely follows cricket mentoring page. So, just to get your insights and have you on the show to pick your brains is definitely an honor of mine. But, as you may know, the show is intended to kind of get into the what do you call it, the strategic and the psychological side to cricket. And you've had a very interesting trajectory when it comes to your cricket journey and what you've also started up with cricket mentoring. So I might actually start off from your early life, essentially, and because it's interesting, like you're actually born in Alice Springs, which people may not know of. So tell us a bit more about growing up in Alice Springs and what life was like as a youngster there.
Yeah, Alice Springs is a small town in the middle of Australia, and we call it the Red Centre, right in the middle of Australia, town of 30,000 people. And yeah, it was a fantastic place to grow up as a kid. I sort of obviously didn't know anything else. I'd ride my bike around town. And it was a really, back then, a really safe place. And yeah, I actually got into cricket when I was living in Canberra. I moved to Canberra when I was 4 years old and then stayed there till I was 10. And then when I was 10, I moved back to Alice Springs. And I think a few months before we moved back to Alice Springs, I played my first game of cricket. My good friend at the time at school, he was playing cricket, and I'd sleep over his house on a Friday night. I wanted to play and I was interested in it. So I'd pack some white clothes in my bag, and I'd sort of go to the game with him. And sometimes I'd get to field and whatever. And then after a couple of weeks, my parents worked out what was going on and they said, "Do you want to play?" And so I finished that season in Canberra, and I loved it. But then moved back to Alice and got right into cricket. But yeah, Alice Springs was a fantastic place to grow up. I lived there until I was 18, so I did all my sort of schooling there, and I really learnt the game in the Northern Territory between Alice Springs and Darwin. I spent a lot of time up in Darwin as well, and was fortunate to represent the Northern Territory in a number of underage national carnivals. So yeah, it was fantastic, and I don't think I'm really proud that I went on to play professionally at Lords and for Middlesex, at one of the biggest sort of teams in the world. And I came from a small town in the middle of Australia, and not many people have sort of left Alice Springs and gone on to be a professional sports person, let alone a cricketer. So yeah, something I'm really proud of.
No, that's amazing. And touching on your journey, especially in Canberra as well. So in Canberra and Alice Springs, were you getting coaching there? Like, what made you get more into cricket, and who shaped your cricketing journey?
No, I wasn't getting coaching. I sort of now with my business cricket mentoring, I'm in the UK at the moment. It's baking hot here today, and I'm sweating in this little room I'm in. But I travel around sort of sharing my sort of understanding of performance and what it takes to become a great cricketer. And something that I think underpins success in any sport or any walk of life is love of what you do and loving of your craft. And if you love it, you do it all the time. That's what you want to be doing all the time. And that was me as a kid. I absolutely loved the game. I loved batting. I loved watching the game. I loved studying the game. And that's sort of what got me to where I got. Was not a lot of coaching. I got some coaching when I sort of made the Northern Territory Institute of Sport squad from about 16 to 18. I got some good coaching from a guy called Graham House and then a guy called John Harmer, who were very good and respected coaches. But for the most part, living in Alice, they were in Darwin. I was in Alice. I did spend one season in Darwin when I was 16 years old. But for the most part, I was just training myself, and I was trying to train every day. I just, because I loved it, because no one was forcing me to. My parents were incredibly supportive, but they weren't pushing me at all. And I was just, that's what I wanted to do. I was very active. There was no social apps, no sort of smartphones or anything to distract me. And so, yeah, I just played it a lot. And when you play something a lot, you get good at it. And that's what really sort of drove everything and took me to where I got to.
And when you were training, you said you trained quite a lot. Did you go with a friend? Like, how did you get throwdowns essentially?
Yeah, well, that's what it was. I'm glad you asked the question. We didn't have our mobile phone, so I'd have the home phone, and I'd sort of Sunday night I'd ring. I had my little notebook of phone numbers of all the other cricketers in town, some from my team, but Alice Springs only has 4 teams, and you get to know everyone really well. And so I'd ring person A and say, "Hey, mate, do you want to have a hit after school tomorrow?" And he'd say, "Sorry, mate, I can't. I'm busy." I'd ring person B. Then if they're free, then I'd say, "Let's meet at the nets at 3:30." And I'd ride my bike from school and pick up my kid at a friend's house nearby, and go to the nets, meet him, and do an hour and a half of throwdowns and have a bit of fun, have a hit, try things, do things with no coaches around. And then I'd say to him, hey, mate, I'm free tomorrow. Do you want to come back tomorrow? And he'd say, sorry, mate, I'm busy. So then I'd get home that night, I'd get in the phone book again, and I'd bring a few other people, and I'd find someone to hit with the next day who's free. And that was my week. Like I did a bit of tennis coaching, and I'd have my structured sessions, but a lot of the week I'd just be having throwdowns and just trying things and just batting and just doing it with someone else around the same age or often slightly older, because I got quite good. So I'd be training with older guys. Every now and again, we'd have an access to a bowling machine, and we'd set that up and we'd use that. But a lot of the time it was just throwdowns, no sidearm, just throwing or bowling to each other and just exploring and having lots of fun.
That's amazing. And it's interesting because my question would be like, because you've spoken a lot in the last few years regarding the psychological side to cricket, which you may not have implemented back when you were in your playing days. And so I suspect at that age you were, looking at cricket more so from a technical perspective, right? So in those training sessions as well, we don't, as you say, you don't have smartphones to kind of record yourself batting and then to check your technique and how it's shaping up. So how did you go about kind of assessing yourself and your own batting in those situations when it comes to those training sessions?
Yeah, great question. I just think it was, I studied the game. I really watched the game closely. And I say to players now in these talks I do traveling around, I say that if you want a competitive advantage, you can just watch the game, because these days kids don't sit and watch the game and they don't listen to the commentators. Whereas I did that a lot. I'd have my notebook and I'd sort of watch the game closely. I'd listen to what the commentators were saying about the strategy or the tactics that were going on, the field settings, so like why a batter's trying to do this or a bowler's trying to do that. And that helped me really understand the game. So I was a real student of the game. And then, I didn't have a video sort of recorder to watch myself back, but I just think I just tried to copy what I saw. So when I was younger, Mark Waugh was my favourite player, so I sort of tried to bat like Mark Waugh, and a few people used to say, oh, you bat like Mark Waugh, and that was a real compliment because that's what I was trying to do. So I think I was just watching the game a lot and seeing it a lot and seeing who was successful, and then I'd just, without being told to, I'd just go and try and copy what I saw. And that's what I teach players now. It's pretty simple, but success leaves clues. If someone's doing something well at the top level, try and replicate what they're doing. You don't have to sort of reinvent the wheel. You can learn from what they're doing. And I think that's just what I sort of was able to do, was just watch the game closely and start to try and sort of work backwards from what I saw and implement it into my game.
Yeah, that's amazing. Amazing advice as well. And looking at, because you mentioned very briefly about playing for Northern Territory under 19s. Correct me if I'm wrong, but according to my research, you've played it 3 times in 3 different years. Is that correct?
Yeah, I can't remember which way it's round, but I think I went to I think I went to 4 19s, four and 3 under 17s carnivals, because so the population of the Northern Territory, similar to the ACT, is much smaller than the other states, and where traditionally we don't have a professional team, we're traditionally much weaker than the other states in the pathway system. And what the rules were back then, and it's changed since I was playing, but back then we didn't have anyone else from other states come and play for us, but we were allowed overage players. So I played an under 19 carnival in 2004 as a 17-year-old. I just turned 17. It was in December 2004 in Melbourne. And then I played in Perth in 2005 as an 18-year-old. And then I played maybe Adelaide in 2006 as a 19-year-old, which was my top age year. And then I played 1 year in, I think, Tasmania in Hobart as an overage player, as a 20-year-old, because they were the rules back then. So I went to 4 19s and 3 under 17s carnivals, and that was amazing because it taught me so much. And I played against some of the games who went on to become some of Australia's greatest ever players, in Steve Smith and Nathan Lyon and David Warner and Mitchell Stark and Josh Hazlewood. And these guys I played junior cricket, Usman Khawaja, played these national carnivals against. But yeah, it was an amazing time. And I didn't know any different. So I missed out on schoolies when I was 18. I missed out on other things, but my sort of, it was like a real sad moment when I played my final carnival, having gone to 7 national carnivals, back then.
Yeah, I mean, you've brought up Usman Khawaja and David Warner and co. So I actually have a note here, like in 2004-2005 season, you actually played against New South Wales under 19s. It was Warner, Usman Khawaja, Peter Forrest, who people may not know, but he played for Australia as well. Moises Henriques, a stalwart in domestic cricket as well, and has played for Australia. Jackson Bird as well, John Hastings. So these are some big names. So at the time when you faced them, did you know that these are some big names, or you just kind of playing, just another kid that was your age group essentially?
Well, when like being from the Northern Territory, usually you're coming up against other states who are always the favourite against you, and there's always talk of who the big gun is. So I remember playing against Philip Hughes at an under-13 carnival, and everyone was like, "He's the next best player." Like his teammates were saying, "He's the next best player since Bradman. He's done this and this and this," and we got him out for a second ball duck in that carnival, and we were up and about as 13-year-olds, and then I came up against Steve Smith at under 17 carnival, and he had come back from playing first grade in Sydney, and he played some second 11 cricket as a 16-year-old. And again, we got him out for a second ball duck, and I caught it first ball duck even. I caught him at first slip, and yeah. So you come up against these guys, and you hear these talks from the like within the whole carnival. Oh, we played against New South Wales yesterday, and you chat to the South Australian guys or the Queensland guys. That Smith, he's a good player, or that Enriques, he's a good player, and so you know who the gurus are, and some of them have already played for Australia under 19s or yeah. So you sort of know, but at the time you're just excited to be there. You're sort of 16, 17, 18. You're on the same field as some of these guys. And yeah, I think you're a bit naive and we're all kids. We're all sort of, no one is a test guru at that stage. So like Nathan Lyon, I would never have thought he would have gone on to become the bowler he has become. He was just another off spinner at the carnival playing for the ACT. And he's obviously developed, and his story is really incredible and really inspiring. But yeah, you sort of don't really know too much about them, but you do hear whispers, and it's just a joy to be there representing your state or your territory and playing against some of these great players.
Some of the names you've mentioned as well, you've sort of reconnected with them. Like what comes to mind is last few months, you had actually, I think you did a net session or you did a session with Steve Smith, and it was posted on the cricket mentoring. So did you remind him of the second ball duck in under 17s or nah?
Yeah. No, I know Steve quite well. We've got some mutual friends. Steve obviously is a Sydney boy. I lived with and played cricket at Middlesex with a guy called Sam Robson, and Sam has played sort of 20 years for Middlesex as an opening batter, played 7 tests for England, and Sam grew up in Sydney. He's got a similar journey to me with his British passport, went over to the UK and played over there. And through Sam, I met a guy called Daniel Roots, who's Steve Smith's best mate. And so through Rootsy, who's one of my best friends, I know Steve quite well. So I have at times reminded him about that second baller. He, of course, doesn't remember it, because why would he remember that? Such a meaningless game in the sort of his career. But yeah, I have reminded him of that. And yeah, I was fortunate, even though I know Steve quite well, we hadn't done anything on a sort of professional sense until November 2024 and pre the Border Gavaskar Trophy. We did a net session. I certainly didn't coach him or offer him any wisdom. It was me just sort of servicing him and feeding him some balls, giving him the sidearm. But we sort of collaborated on video, got a few million views, so that was cool. But yeah, it's cool to watch his career and having watched him develop from a promising junior to a sort of a struggling international cricketer to one of the game's greatest ever.
Yeah, that's an incredible journey, definitely. And I think a lot of people can take inspiration from Steve Smith's trajectory when it comes to cricket. And on your case as well, like when you did get the call up and you found out that you're going to play for Northern Territory under 19, and you were, I think you said you were 17 years old when you played the first edition of it. How did you feel? Like that must have felt daunting for a kid at that age to come up against players, much older.
Oh, look, I don't think it was daunting, to be honest, because I was young and I'd played with older kids all my life. Growing up in the middle of Australia, to get to a sort of a level that I was at, I had to play against the kids who were older. And I did it in tennis. I did it in sort of cross-country running. I did it in whatever sport I was playing. I was always playing against older kids. So I certainly wasn't daunted. And I'd spent that season, the 2004 year, I was in year 11 at school, and my parents allowed me to go up to Darwin for 6 months. And I boarded at a school for a few months, and then I moved in with what became a guy that became my best mate for the rest of my life. And I played in the Darwin season and did my schooling up in Darwin. And so I'd spent the season with the same group of guys that I ended up then going away with. And so I'd done pretty well in that season, and I felt like I'd earned my spot in that under-19s squad. And so, yeah, a few guys came back from Adelaide who were 18 or 19 and gone away to play cricket and whatever and hadn't played in the Darwin season. But yeah, look, it was just exciting. I was just excited. I was a bit naive. I didn't sort of really understand, I guess, too much about it. I had been to a few 17s carnivals, so I did know what the carnivals were about, and that we were playing against the best cricketers in the country. But at the time, I was ambitious. I wanted to be one of those best cricketers in the country. So it was not really daunting. It was mostly excitement. Now, I did struggle in that carnival. I don't think I did much. I was certainly out of my depth from a skill point of view, but I know I was selected, A, because I'd done well, but B, they were sort of they knew that I had years coming up. They saw me as a future captain, which I was, and they were sort of investing in my developments in the future. So yeah, look, it was lots of fun. Lots of fun and some great learnings from it.
And as well, around that, I think a few years later, when you were playing in the under 19s, you also played grade cricket. So my question is, what was that? How did you find the difference between playing age group cricket, like under 19s carnival, versus playing grade cricket? Would have been obviously against a lot older people that have been experienced and played for a while.
Yeah, again, very different. You play grade cricket, as you say. It's experience that they might not be as quick, they might not be as skillful, but they've got experience which you can't buy, and they know how to use the skills they've got. So I was playing again, growing up in Alice Springs. I was playing senior men's cricket at 13, playing A grade in Alice Springs, and scoring runs and doing quite well, but it's not the highest of standards. And then I went up to Darwin, and I was playing sort of club cricket, district A grade cricket there at 16. So I'd certainly already been exposed to that, and then coming to Perth was no different. The Darwin competition is really strong. It was back then. It's probably even stronger now with more and more imports coming up, but. Look, I'd had exposure to that sort of environment in Alice and in Darwin, so it was nothing new. But moving to Perth as an 18-year-old and sort of finding my way, starting in fourth grade and moving up the grades was a challenge in itself. But yeah, look, again, I sort of wasn't overthinking it. I think that what I was doing was just enjoying the situation I was in. I was sort of ambitious. My goal and dream was always to play for Australia and play Test cricket for Australia and play on the Boxing Day Test and those sort of things, like a lot of kids growing up back in the 90s, early 2000s. So that was my goal and dream, and I was always ambitious and trying to take action towards that. But in any moment, it was just enjoying where I was. It was just doing sort of the best I could do and just sort of trying to be the best I could be and enjoy the training, train hard and give my best on the weekend.
And as well, when you made that move to Perth, if I'm not mistaken, you also played alongside the likes of like Adam Voges, who's I think coached Western Australia and obviously also played for Australia as well. So what was that experience like?
Yeah, look, walking into Melville Cricket Club as an 18-year-old, having just finished I think I went in January, so I finished school in November, late November 2005, went off to a 19s carnival, then we had a Christmas break, then I went off to a 17s carnival. So I lobbed up at Melville Cricket Club, who had just the two previous seasons, they had won the two-day flag. They were the best club in the competition. I lobbed up there in middle of January 2006 as an 18-year-old. And yeah, it was really exciting to have a guy like Scott Muirman, who was the opening batter for Western Australia at the time. Adam Voges wasn't around a lot because he was in the state team and a big part of the state team, but every now and again he'd come down the club and then just guys who were grade heroes, Ben Lillis and Andy Gregg and Steve Russell. Sean Gillies was in the state team at the time. Steve McGoffin was in the state team at the time. Have these guys around the club was really, really exciting. Drew Porter was a couple of years older than me, and he'd won Player of the National Carnival at an under-17 level a few years earlier. And Luke Towers, I knew quite well. I'd played junior cricket against him. We had overseas pros, Dimitri Mascarenas. So there was all these amazing cricketers. And so to just walk into that environment and sort of try and compete with them and sort of make it into the team and be respected by them was really, really exciting. Like I wasn't scared. I wasn't intimidated. I was like this 18-year-old naive kid from the middle of Australia just who loved cricket and wanted to get on with everyone. I was trying to sort of be mates with everyone, and I just was super excited to be there and learn from them and watch them go about what they were doing. And yeah, a lot of them became some of my great mates for the rest of my life, and I'm still very good friends with Vogesy. I see him a lot. We go to the gym together, and yeah, as time progressed, he became a mentor and a good friend, and yeah, someone I speak to about coaching now. But yeah, as an 18-year-old walking into the environment with those sort of players, it was just super exciting, really.
And as well, a few years later as well, you made the move to England and you're part of the Middlesex setup. And it was alongside the likes of Chris Rogers, who's been, such a great servant of Australian cricket and is now currently coaching Victoria. Dawood Malan, probably very extremely underrated England cricketer. And the likes of Ian Morgan is an England legend as well. So, tell us a bit about the journey, like making that move to England, playing alongside and training alongside these great players. What was that experience like?
Well, look, the first part, I guess, is the journey getting over to England. So I was 19 years old, or 19 or 20, and one of my good mates at the time, a guy called Shannon Mascarenas, he's Dimitri Mascarenas' younger brother, and Dimitri's a guy from Perth who, like me, had a British passport, went over to England, and he went on to play for England in a number of white ball games. And Shannon said, why don't you go? Like, I was not doing that well in grade cricket at the time, nowhere near the WA system or setup. And Shannon said, why don't you go and play in England? You've got a British passport. You should go over there. And I'd never even considered it. I didn't have a British passport at the time. I just had commented that my dad was born in England and I could get a British passport. So that sort of sparked something in me, and I got my dad to get his British passport. And then once he got his, I could get mine. And yeah, so I went to England. I sort of got with an agent. He found me a club, the East Coast Cricket Club in the Middlesex League. And I went over there in 2008 as a 20-year-old, having spent the 2006 and 2007 Australian off seasons playing in Darwin. So I went to England for my third Australian winter playing cricket, my sort of sixth season in a row, I guess. And I wasn't even really thinking of playing professionally over there at the time. I got an opportunity to trial with Hampshire early in that year, and I sort of wasn't ready. I played one game. It was a rain-affected game. I think I only got a few runs. But, yeah, I just had a great time living overseas, being young, being free, living in London. It was an incredible time in my life. And then I came back to Perth. I sort of played the season in Perth again, still aiming to play for WA and play for Australia. Went back to East Coast again in 2009 as my second season. I did well again. At the end of the 2009 season, when I was 21, nearly 22, I got off an opportunity to trial for Middlesex. It was a 50-over game, end of the season, like a bit of a, like, oh, let's have a look at this guy. He's done well in the club sort of competition. I'd done well in the league cricket for the 2 seasons. I think I got the second most runs my first season and the most runs my second season. And so, yeah, I played this game. I went over to Gloucestershire, to the county ground in Bristol, and it was a rain-affected game. We nearly didn't get on, and the captains agreed to sort of play a 26-over-a-side game. But end of season, a lot of the pros didn't want to play. They were like, oh, can we just call it off and go home after a long season? Fortunately for me, the game went ahead. I walked out and opened the batting sort of in the second innings, we were chasing 126. Now, this was pre-T20 cricket, like early in the T20 days, so like people weren't T20 specialists, chasing 126. And I think I hit the first over for 24, and the bowler was David Payne, who now plays for the Scorchers in the Big Bash. He was a very young bowler back then, but I think I hit the first ball at the innings for 6 over mid-off. Second ball went for 6 over mid-off, another 6 later in the over. And all of a sudden, the coaching, like the second 11 coach and the people at the ground were like, who is this guy? Where's he been? And on the back of that, I got invited to go and meet the first team coach a few days later, and then he invited me to come back for pre-season training the following year. So 2010, so I left Perth a bit earlier the following year, 2010, and I went back to the UK, started doing pre-season with the Middlesex squad. I was the only player uncontracted, sort of training with them in the sort of March, April time. I then trialled and started playing more games for them in early that season, 2010, as a 22-year-old. A few of the pros, like the big boys, O.A. Shah and Owen Morgan, came back from the IPL, and they then meant a few guys from the first team came back to the second team, and I was left out for a month or so. In that time, I actually was part of a Bollywood movie, which was an incredible time and another story. But then I got another opportunity, and it was in July, started July, sort of 2010, that I sort of went to Middlesex and said, look, I'm going to go on trial at Hampshire. I was trying to sort of play them a bit and sort of say, look, someone else wants me. You need to make a decision. You're either going to sign me or I'm going to go elsewhere. I'd done well. I'd scored a few 90s and a couple of hundreds. And the second team coach, Richard Johnson, said, no, Scholes, please play for me this next game. I want to sign you. I'm trying to get you signed and I really rate you and blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, I'll play for you one more game, but then I'm going to go to Hampshire. And as it turned out, as sort of fate or luck or whatever meant to be, I got 180 in that game. And then the night I sort of got out for 180, having batted all day, Angus Fraser sort of came and said to me, Tom, congratulations. Here's a 2.5-year contract for the rest of this season and the next 2 seasons. We'd love you to be a professional cricketer with Middlesex. And also you're selected to play against Bangladesh at Lord's on Sunday. And so that was an incredible few days, an incredible week in my life to be given the contract, get sort of become a professional cricketer and to make my debut against Bangladesh at Lord's. Yeah, so it was a bit of a journey. I spent 2.5 seasons grinding and doing well. I didn't sort of walk over and get in the squad straight away. I was playing club cricket a lot of the time and just training, working hard during the week. I was working, doing some coaching, etc., to make ends meet. And then, got my contract and the next couple of years were amazing. And as your question was, I played a handful of games with Owen Morgan. He was an incredible guy and an amazing player. I didn't play a lot with Chris Rogers, but he became one of my best mates. He was a groomsman at my wedding. I speak to him a lot, and we talk a lot about coaching now. And I was 12th man a few times when Andrew Strauss was playing. He was captain of England at the time. I played a few games with Stephen Finn and quite a bit with O.A. Shah, who had played for England. And so, yeah, to be in the change room with those sort of guys, as well as some excellent county cricketers like Joe Denley, who also played for England, and Scott Newman and a number of other really good Tim Murtagh county cricketers. It was an incredible time in my life, and something I look back on with, really fond memories, and really proud to have sort of made it to where I got to.
Yeah, that's incredible. I was actually regarding, I think that over you said you hit for 26 runs. And I'm just curious, like, what do you feel like you did right in that situation? Because it was, as you mentioned, before the era of T20 cricket, and it was in the first over. So that's pretty incredible to be able to do that. Like, were you already in your flow state? You feel like you, or did you feel like you were going extra hard that over to make a statement? What made you feel like you allowed you to score those 26 runs, or made you succeed in that particular match?
Yeah, interestingly, like I look back and I don't think I realized how important that game would have been in my career at the time. At the time, I was like, look, it's one game, whatever, who cares? But the fact that it was nearly caught off and it was a rain affected game, I think I was just thinking, this game's not very important. It's not really going to matter. So even though it was a big moment and it turned out to be a huge moment in my career, in my life, I think I walked out to bat in the second innings with a guy called Steve Selwood, who was an ex-pro. He'd played a bit for Derbyshire and he was a league sort of guru, and I played a lot against him, knew him quite well. He was an excellent batter. He was a free-flowing player, a left-hander. And we walked out to bat. I remember saying to him, let's just have some fun, mate. Let's take him on. Neither of us were contracted. We sort of both felt a bit like we had nothing to lose, even though we were trying to make it. And so, I just sort of tapped my bat, and first ball, I was just free. I was just playing with freedom, and it was up there. He sort of left arm bowler. He just sort of floated it up there. It was there to hit, and I just went for it. And fortunately, I connected it, launched it 10 rows back, and then sort of same ball, next ball, I went again. And a few balls later, he dropped short, and I pulled it over the short boundary of 6. And I think it was just that I was so carefree at the time, so relaxed. I think I was in a good space. I must have been hitting the ball well leading up to that and feeling good about myself. That, I just walked out there with complete freedom, complete clarity. I knew that I wanted to be positive, and I think I don't, like, this is quite a long time ago, 2009, sorry. I don't remember exactly what I sort of was thinking walking out to bat, but I know I was playing with freedom and I was trusting myself. And I think I might have been saying to myself, let's go. Let's just show them what I'm capable of. Let's take the game on a bit and make a bit of a statement. But it's just fortunate how things work out. I took my opportunity, which you have to in professional sport, and that got me more opportunities. Had I not done that, I probably don't get any more opportunities. So, it was a big moment, but I guess I didn't really understand that at the time. I just was enjoying it and playing with freedom, which I now teach is the ultimate state you want to get into, even in the big moments.
That's actually something I want to address, because it's really, really fascinating. You're detailing, like, you're playing with freedom. You weren't thinking too much. You're just looking to have some fun. There wasn't much to lose. It's only, up from here because you felt like you weren't contracted. So it's not like you have a lot to lose in that sense. You just felt like, okay, I don't have pressure on me right now. Let's just play with that ultimate freedom. And cricket's such a funny game in that sense, because obviously a player can play with that freedom, but then if there's a bit of pressure, they can look like a completely different batsman, right? So I guess, how do you coach people in the sense of allowing them to play in that freedom? Because in your situation, in that specific circumstance, I guess you can say the variables around you kind of favored you to play with that freedom, but it's always not like that, right? Like, sometimes the game is it's this game, if you have to score well, or else you get a contract, or maybe you get dropped from this team or whatever, or you're playing for a contract, whatever it is. Sometimes you're playing with high stakes, and that can cause pressure, and therefore that can make you a little anxious and nervous, and therefore you don't play in that freedom, because obviously as cricketers we want to play with that ultimate freedom. So what's the advice that you give to cricketers to play with that freedom despite the circumstances around them?
Yeah, look, I spend an hour talking about this, so I'll try and make it as sort of brief as I can for this. But firstly, I think when you play with freedom, it's when you're not thinking about the outcome or worrying about the consequence of the outcome. And I think that generally the word freedom is when we're at our best. And that's when we're in our sort of a bit more of our flow state. We're just able to react to what's happening in front of us. And we have clarity of thought. We have clarity of mind. And that's what most people are able to do in the nets where there's no consequence. But what I see a lot, and I hear a lot through our sort of coaching and our social platforms, is I'm really good in the nets, but I'm not able to do it in a match. And that's when people are playing with a lot of fear. They're really tense and anxious, and that's caused by the story they're telling themselves and the outcome that they're sort of so focused on. So it's a really sort of you've got to spend a bit of time unpacking this, but basically I sort of say that pressure is not a real thing. It's not something that we can physically touch or see. It's a meaning or a something we sort of describe when we get a change in our state in our body. When we get tingles in our sort of feet or hands, or we get sweaty palms, or we get butterflies in our stomach, we feel that in our body, and then we say, oh, there's pressure. There's all this pressure because my body has these feelings. So what I sort of say to athletes is pressure is how you perceive it. How come some people are able to walk out into the biggest moment of their lives, a World Cup final or a final, and they're able to play at their best, they're able to play with freedom? Because it's how they perceive that moment and the importance of that moment. And for so many athletes and so many cricketers, the importance of a certain moment is life or death. And it's like, if I don't do well today, this is how they feel. And it's never true. But if I don't do well today, someone's going to die. But they also think, if I don't do well today, my parents aren't going to love me. My friends aren't going to talk to me. I'm going to be a loner. I'm going to be laughed at. And they sort of believe a story that they've gathered somewhere along their journey, that their identity as a person, their value as a person, is tied up to the result of the match, the result of their sport. If they do well, then they're more valuable. If they don't do well, they're less valuable. And when you're coming from that as a belief, well, then, every innings, every match is so meaningful. And it's really hard to play with freedom. I think that when you're playing in that state, you're focused on the outcome and the meaning of the outcome. Now, I say to people, if I just said to someone who lands from Mars and said, oh, look, you're going to play a game of cricket tomorrow and you're going to get 0 runs, and they didn't know what that meant, they'd be like, okay, 0. Okay, whatever. But we then imply a meaning to that score. Oh, that means I'm not very good. That means I'm not going to make the team, or I'm going to get dropped, or I'm not going to get the contract. We put a story next to the number, which then creates a lot of meaning, which creates the feelings we get. So I think that the best players, and what I say, when you're playing in that state, a state of fear, it's like putting a hypothetical backpack on and putting bricks in the backpack, and you're going out to bat with this heavy backpack, and because that's how you feel. Everything's tense, everything's tight. You're slow to react, you're slow to move, and you never really perform at your best. But when you're at your best, you're usually quite free. There's no backpack. You feel light, you feel fast, you feel free. And so the word freedom is really important, and that's what we're aiming for. And that's when we're trusting ourselves. That's when we're sort of not overthinking, not overanalyzing, and we're really trusting our subconscious and trusting our instincts. So what I say to people is, you've got to try and shift the meaning of the sport and what it means to you as a person, and understand that your identity, your value as a person, isn't defined by the score next to your name. If you go and get 100 or you go and get 0, you're not a better or a worse person, even though we feel like we are, because people might send us more messages. We might get pats on the back when we walk into the club on a Saturday night after scoring runs. We feel like a more valuable person when we've won the game for our team. Everyone gets around us. And when we get a duck, people don't talk to us. But at the end of the day, you're still the same person. And the following day and the day after, the world moves on, and everyone forgets about what's happened 2 days ago. So I think that's a starting point to allow yourself to play with freedom, is letting go of the importance and of the outcome, and that someone's going to live or die by my result. And if you can do that, you can sort of walk into a big moment and say, you know what, I'm just going to do my best. I'm going to do my best. And if you can shift it from, when I do well, I'm going to enjoy it, because so many players have this mindset of, oh, when I get 100, when I win games, when I take wickets, I'm going to enjoy it. If you can shift that to, I'm going to enjoy it, and I know that on the back of that, results will come. And I share the story of Ash Barty, the tennis player, who she sort of was a great tennis player as a junior, won Junior Wimbledon as a 15-year-old. Then at about 20, she quit tennis because she was hating it so much. She was so sick of being told she's Ash Barty, the tennis player. She wanted to sort of be someone other than Ash Barty, the tennis player. So she quit. She went and played in the Women's Big Bash for a couple of years. And then she came back to tennis, and she rediscovered her love for the game and why she loved the game. And she went back with more fun, more joy, more excitement, more energy. And she went on to become the world number 1. And she held on to that excitement, that fun, that joy, that energy. And that's what got her to become the world number 1. So when I'm advising players now, I'm like, if we can focus on what you enjoy about the game, and forget about the outcome, forget about the results, and focus on the things you love, and understand that the results will come as a result of focusing on the things you love, that's a great place to play. And that's what allows people to play with more freedom and so forth. So people talk about focus on the process, not the outcome. But I sort of guess I really try and frame it as focus on enjoyment. If you focus on enjoyment while putting in the work and accepting that the outcome is out of your control. You might get a bad decision. You might get a ball that stays low. You might get out to a screamer that 99 times out of 100 goes past the fielder and goes for four. Like, there's so much out of your control. So you've got to accept that and bring your best, show up with an acceptance, a joy, an energy of excitement. Then you can bring your best to the big moments. So that's sort of, I guess, a brief understanding of what I try and help athletes with.
Yeah, that's incredible. And just to add as well, I think when it comes to fixating on the result and when you have that mindset, and to just kind of take it back, like it's not even just about cricket, it's about just life in general. Like I find personally, like a lot of things that are implemented or have to do from a batting perspective actually extends to life. So like what you're saying is that, okay, don't fixate on the result and the outcome, and don't put your self-confidence or your confidence on the result itself. You're going to be in a dark place, right? Because obviously cricket, there's ups and downs, but just like in life, like there's things that happen, there's a lot of ups and downs, and we just have to stay kind of level-headed. But we shouldn't feel like we have to have this level of self-hatred if things don't go a certain way. And I think when it comes to cricket, unfortunately, a lot of kids, like, obviously people want to become the best cricketer they can be at, let's just say 18 years old, 19 years old. But if they've felt like throughout their whole life, like they are judged based on results and outcomes, then obviously it's a lot more work for them to be like, okay, get to a place where they feel comfortable and feel like, no, my self-worth isn't hinging on the results, right? And that takes a level of effort and work. And some people are blessed to, have the support system around them from a young age, where maybe their parent was very super supportive despite of results, being like, look, you have this incredible talent, just keep working at it, or like instilling that confidence in them. And so that's where the child will be like, okay, I don't have this sense of, okay, result-based mentality from a younger age. So you see some kids like that actually end up being better cricketers because they're doing it purely for what you mentioned, like the enjoyment and everything. But a lot of cricketers, like I know I'm definitely in that boat as well, where it wasn't just about working through the anxiety. It's more about knowing that, wait, this anxiety exists not even just in my cricket, but also in other parts of my life. Like
Mm.
that's, I think, the realization that happened to me. And I think as well, like when I talk to people about cricket, I always tell them like batting's just meditation, right? Like you just want to be as present, and you just want to react to the ball as best you can, be present in the moment. And when you're in that state, you can think of like yogi masters in the mountains, right? They're not thinking about the self-worth being on the results side of things. They're just so present, right? So whatever happens, and it's not like their I don't know, emotions or feelings change as a result of the results, right? They're just always present regardless. So I guess it's obviously easier said than done, but I guess that's what it reminded me, like everything what you mentioned, because it's not just about cricket. I think it's just extending to all facets of life. So I just wanted to see if you had some thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. And I think our self worth, as you mentioned there, which I say is your value, the same sort of thing, is often starts with how we're parented. As you say, as you rightly said, like if we get in the car after a good day and mum and dad are really happy and say, "Come on, let's go celebrate, let's go get ice cream. I'm so proud of you." We feel loved, we feel connected, and we feel like, yes, I made my parents proud. And mum and dad are doing it from a place of love because they're so happy for you. And then the following week, you don't get any runs, and mum and dad say, "Oh, well, what were you thinking? What were you doing?" And again, they're trying to help, but they're the kid who's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They go, "No ice cream this week. Oh, I didn't do very well. I'm not, like, mum and dad don't love me as much," and your self worth feels lower, feels less. So, and then you add on to that as you get older, and you get a phone, your mates start texting you when they see you've scored runs and done well, you get more love from other people. Yeah, it's really hard to break out of that if your self worth has been connected to your results for so many years. But that's what I try and sort of help players firstly understand, and then sort of work through that. Hey, you are more than the sum of you are more than your result. You are more of a person, and the people around you are going to love you no matter what. They're going to love you for being a good person and for giving your best effort no matter what. I sort of jokingly say in my talks that I don't think people cancel their friendship when they open the scorecard on the Saturday and see that someone got a duck. Oh, I'm not going to be your friend anymore. Or your parents don't make you walk home or don't cook your dinner because you got a duck. Yet that's how we do feel as kids. I didn't get ice cream. My parents don't love me as much. And that's where it sort of starts a lot of the time. So my advice to parents, if there's any parents listening to this, is you've got to try and act like the result doesn't matter. You might feel inside quite different. You might feel really happy when they do well and disappointed when they don't, but you need to show them and outwardly be very level. If the kid has had a tough day, the last thing they need is a parent kicking them while they're down, even though the parent is trying to help, even though the parent has some ideas or some wisdom to pass on. The kid usually knows what they've done wrong and they don't want to be kicked while they're down. I think the best thing any parent can do is say, I love to watch you play, regardless of whether you've done well or not, and then say nothing. Say nothing. Be there to love and support. Be there to put your arm around them if they want it. Put the music on in the car ride home and just say nothing. Talk about something else. If they want to talk about cricket, they'll come to you, or sport, they'll come to you. But when you're forcing that on them and you're sort of saying, do this, why didn't you do that? And you're doing it from a place of love. I've never met a parent who doesn't want what's best for their child or children. But the car ride home is the number one reason kids quit sport, because they feel like they're letting their parents down. They feel like they're disappointing their parents. And kids are so aware. They know what their parents are sacrificing and putting in, leaving work early, getting up early, doing a second job, whatever, to pay for things. Kids know that their parents are putting in. They don't want to let their parents down. And it often gets to a point where the kid feels like, all I'm doing here is letting my parents down. I'm not enjoying this at all. All I want is to do well, to not let my parents down. And then they sort of start hating the game and they end up giving up. So I think the best thing a parent can do for the longevity of their child and for the success of their child is just to say, I love to watch you play, and then say nothing. And that really makes a difference in the young athlete's self-worth.
I think as well, like touching on the parent psychology, like it's also important to note like how important it is for the parents and the way that they behave, and how that obviously shapes the child, like you described. Like, you know, if they come in with negative emotions, when it comes to cricket as well, it's meant to be something they enjoy, then it's going to leave a mark where it's like, okay, they do badly, then, you know, they don't get the ice cream, then it's going to leave a mark in that sense. So even as I've seen so many times, like unfortunately, like sometimes if I go to the nets with mates, I'm seeing a young kid getting trained by his parents, and then the dad is scolding the child for playing the wrong shot on the wrong ball. That's already going to leave a certain mark. But also for that, we're talking about results-based mindset for the parent as well. I think they're going into that session being like, they have to play this shot in a certain way because they have to score X amount of runs in the next game, and I need my son to be like Virat Kohli. And there's already a kind of, we're talking about, I guess, the childhood trauma, but also the trauma from the parent. It's for them to be self-reflecting, being like, you know, why do I want my kid to be like this? Why is it that I need my kid to be like this? Because it shouldn't be like that. You shouldn't be pushing a child to be like, I need my son to be Virat Kohli. That's a very, unreasonable expectation. It should always stem for what you've just touched on throughout the podcast about, you know, enjoying the game for what it is. And that will facilitate that freedom, which will hopefully allow them to play at their potential as well. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that because obviously with your experience with coaching and dealing with other parents as well.
Absolutely. I think that anytime you're trying to force your dream onto your kid, it's not sustainable. It's very rare that a parent's dream that's forced onto a kid ends well. So I think that, like, from my point of view, what I'd encourage parents and what I'm trying to do with my 3 daughters, my oldest is only 7, so she's still quite young, but is to let them explore things and find what they're passionate about, then support them however I can, but try and get other people to be their mentors in whatever it is that they want to do. And then I can be their parent. I can guide, I can teach, I can support, but I don't need to be the one that's telling them what to do and coaching them and giving them advice, because I want to keep that separate. So I think that is my belief in giving my young people, my kids, the best chance of being successful. And we can separate parenting and sport, because I think too many parents force upon their child. I loved cricket. I wanted to be Virat Kohli. I wasn't Virat Kohli. Now I'm an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer, whatever. I'm going to get my kid to cricket. I'm going to try and make them Virat Kohli. Well, that's not a model that's sustainable. I think you can take them to cricket, let them try cricket. If they enjoy it, really support them. But if you're forcing something on them, it's your goals and dreams and not theirs. And that's not sustainable. And it never ends well. And it often ends that the kid resents the sport, and sometimes the parent gets frustrated at the kid, and it can often cause a lot of division within the family, and that's never a good thing. The parent is trying to support their kid the best they can, but deep down they're trying to really live their fantasy through, or their goals through, their kids. So yeah, look, if there are any parents listening, I think you've got to take a step back and have that sort of reflection of, is this my dream, or is this their dream? And maybe you're forcing cricket on them, but they love soccer or tennis or drawing or gymnastics or something else. And that's where they're more likely to have a more fulfilling career, and they're more likely to have a successful career because it's driven from a place of love. And when you love something, you do it more. And when you do it more, you get better at it. That's where they're more likely to have a career because they love what they do rather than something you're trying to force on them.
I think you're describing maybe a bit of yourself in the sense that because you described it yourself earlier in the show where, you were passionate about cricket and you just trained and then you did all this by yourself. And back in the days, there was no smartphone. So you're calling up people the night before, getting your kit nearby, this and that. So on top of that as well, finding that passion is incredibly important. And for your journey, it seems like what you described throughout the show as well is that you're so passionate, you just worked hard, and then when you went to England, for example, it was a new exciting adventure. You didn't have any pressure on you in that sense, and then you sort of worked hard to the best of your ability, but you didn't necessarily describe anything, should I say, like negative or any sort of pressure, right? Up until maybe what I've seen online when it comes to that list A debut for Middlesex versus Bangladesh. So you can correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the first time you felt that incredible pressure to perform? Because I mean, throughout the show, you've just been describing the excitement, the journey, the passion for the sport, kind of like in a Marnus Labuschagne mode, if that makes sense.
Yeah, look, no, I think there would have been times I felt pressure before that, but the Bangladesh game was, yeah, my first professional game. I sort of felt a lot of, I guess, imposter syndrome and uncertainty and doubts. And the night before, I've written about this, but the night before, I only had 40 minutes sleep because I was lying in bed just thinking about what could happen, what happens if I'm not good enough. I had about 30 of my teammates and friends coming to watch at Lords that day. It was a Sunday, and I was like thinking about all the negative what ifs, what ifs, what ifs. What if I get it wrong? What if I look silly? What if I drop a catch? What if I... And I found that really hard to deal with in my own mind before going out the next day. And so I sort of, 40 minutes sleep before. I was waiting on the balcony at Lords next into bat, and I was sort of falling asleep, and I had to get up and sort of get myself going. And because I was so physically tired, even though I was in the biggest moment of my life. But I definitely felt pressure before that, whether it was in finals or whether that was in national carnivals or whatever. But I guess I had this positiveness and optimism, and I had no like pressure from my family. The pressure was all from myself. It was all like me trying to be the best I can be and me trying to make it, me trying to get closer to my dreams and goals. But fortunately, I had no like, I'm going to let mum and no feeling or thought, I'm going to let mum and dad down. I'm going to let someone down here, which a lot of kids live with and play with, is I'm going to let dad down if I don't score any runs. And so many young athletes, boys especially, when they get out or when they make a mistake, they look to dad and they think, what's dad thinking? Oh, no, what's my dad going to say? I've let him down. And that's the person that they're doing it for. They're sort of doing it for their dad. They're not actually doing it for themselves. And I guess if I reflect on my journey, I did it for me because I loved it. And I think that's what is the most sustainable, and that's what creates the most success in the long term, is when you're doing it for you. And you might have a parent who is supportive but also pushy. But if you're doing it from the starting point of I love this and I want to be the best I can be, well, then when they're pushing you to do something you love. That's a different place than pushing you to do something they want you to do.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense, and obviously it's sad if I'm sure when you see a child kind of look towards their parents when it comes to a certain situation in the game as well, that kind of I guess implies that there's some sort of dependent style attachment, and it's not exactly quote unquote healthy. I mean, it's normal in the sense that kids exhibit that behavior, but if you're talking about from a cricket perspective to help players be the best they can be. It can be, a bit sad to see because you obviously want them to do it for what you've described, like the passion of itself, right? And so even in that Bangladesh game, like, because I'm background is Bangladesh, so I follow Bangladesh cricket like properly, like I'm talking like domestic matches and all that kind of stuff. So that Bangladesh team that you faced was actually a very, very strong, I would say one of the best Bangladesh teams in Bangladesh's history. Like had Tamim Iqbal, Shakib Al Hassan, Mushfiqur Rahim, Mahmudullah, Mashrafi Mortaza, one of the best Bangladeshi pacers as well. Abdul Razak was probably one of the best left arm spinners from Bangladesh as well. So, like, I can imagine, like, you're saying you felt the pressure, all this kind of stuff, because it was quite a strong team in that sense. And then, to be coming up against, say, in that situation, what would you give yourself, looking back, right? Like, what would you say to your 22-year-old Tom the night before that debut, with the knowledge that you have now?
I would say it's going to be okay. Even if you make a mistake tomorrow, your life will be okay. Like, even if you drop a catch, it'll suck, but life will go on. It's not the end of the world. It's not the end of your life. No one's holding a gun to your head if you make a mistake. Just have fun. Just express yourself. And interestingly, I was sitting there the night before, lying there the night before, trying to go to sleep, and I couldn't sleep. I had all these worries going through my head. But when I was in the middle, I was actually pretty calm. Like, when I fielded, I think I took a catch maybe, or I fielded on the boundary, and I fielded pretty well. I was a pretty decent fielder. And when I went out to bat, I had old A Shah at the other end. The wicket fell. I think there was a decent partnership before me. Then the wicket fell. I think it was Milan and Shah batting. They put on a bit of a partnership. I was batting 5. Then the wicket fell, and I put my gear on, walked down the stairs, walked through the long room at Lord's, and I got out in the middle, and it was a surreal feeling. But I don't remember feeling a huge amount of pressure. And I remember getting off the mark with a little tuck to square leg off Shakib. But then, I sort of got out trying to slog sweep, which was a positive shot of mine. It was something I'd been playing a lot in the second team and having success with, but I think I just picked the wrong ball. So in the actual moment, I was actually quite free and quite calm and having fun. It was all the doubts and worries beforehand, all the sort of worries about what if I get it wrong? What if my friend's there and I I'm a goose? What if I look like I'm not good enough? And once I was there, it was actually okay. So what I would say is, you're going to be okay. Like, whatever you're worrying about is not as big as you think. And I think now to what Rory McIlroy, the great golfer, speaks about, and he said that this has really helped him in recent years, is where he's got children now and he's got a different perspective of golf. And he does this exercise where he thinks about what's the worst that could happen out on the golf course. And he thinks about all the worst case scenarios. He goes, okay, I land in the water. All right, that sucks. But then I put the ball down and I hit my next shot. Okay, I double bogey a putt. I triple putt. Like, what's the worst that could happen? He goes, well, I've worked out that I can actually overcome all of those things, and there's nothing really bad. When you think about, I'm playing a game of golf, I'm not getting my leg cut off, I'm not getting attacked by a crocodile, I'm not got a kid in hospital. It's actually not as bad as you think. And so I guess I would try and put that into perspective a bit for my younger self. Is like, mate, whatever happens, it's a game of cricket. You'll still have your contract. You'll still got to sort of back to training on Monday. You still got to keep getting better. This is not the most fatal and final thing of your life. It's a moment in time, and life will be okay regardless. And I think that would have maybe calmed me down a bit.
Yeah, because I think it's really interesting you say all that, because it goes back to what you mentioned as well, like attaching meaning to something that's probably not there. Like, for example, you talked about, okay, looking like a goose if you get out for a duck or whatever, your parents are there, your family are there, your friends are there watching you. Like, you think that they're thinking that, but in reality, like, I'm sure they're just proud to see you even just walk down the Lord's, stairs and onto the field, right? Like, that's a crazy moment of itself, regardless of the result. But then our brain sort of tricks ourselves to keep thinking and kind of dwelling in the negatives, and one thought leads to another thought. So it's all about, like, it's like a seed, like you have to kind of nip in the bud, where it's like, I'm not going to let this one negative thought compound to into such a big thing. So I guess for yourself, you just described, like, kind of thinking, what's the worst case scenario, what can happen. And sometimes, like, we sort of also build a narrative where it's like, okay, we need this game to go well for this thing to happen, so therefore I can have a future in the sport, or something like that. Like, we've already created that narrative in our mind. And so that's kind of like interesting how our brain sort of tricks us, and it's almost like the survival instinct, right? It's kind of training us to feel a certain way of surviving, but we shouldn't need to feel that we're operating from that survival lens, right? From that survival instinct. We need to be free and have that trust, right? Or let go of that kind of narrative in your mind, because sometimes it's scary because we've already built that narrative, like, this has to go well so my future is good, because at the end of the day, no one knows how the future is going to pan out. So that thought process needs to be let go of, essentially, to give yourself the best freedom. So I guess that's really interesting, because all of that kind of stems to self-awareness, right? Because it's about unpacking your thought patterns, unpacking what's going on, and kind of nipping it in the bud, right? And sometimes it can be difficult to be to coach, right? Like, you can't just tell someone to be self-aware and see the thoughts within, reflect on it, and kind of unpack what's going on, and then kind of put things in place so that they're thinking the right things and staying present in the moment. So I guess, what advice do you have when it comes to this sort of psychological understanding within cricket, when it comes to building that self-awareness in cricket, to in cricketers, to nip those bad thoughts in the bud?
Yeah, look, I think the first thing you said there is self-awareness. Is like, the thing that growing up without social media, without an insight into the world's best athletes, was I thought that what I was going through, I was the only one going through it. And I thought I didn't understand my thoughts and emotions. And that's what sort of the back cricket mentoring is built on, is me trying to help the younger version of myself who struggled with understanding my thoughts and emotions. I trained hard. I understood the game a lot, but I didn't understand myself at all. And so I think that it starts with self-awareness, and it starts with reflection and saying, like, okay, what are the stories I'm saying to myself? What are the stories I'm believing? I'm believing that, oh, if I drop a catch, no one's going to like me. If I drop a catch, no one's going to talk to me. If I don't get any runs, my value in my social circle is going to decrease. And I think it's a good exercise to sort of jot down a lot of the stories that are happening in your mind, and you sort of have over time become to believe are true. And then on the flip side, write down other stories that are true. Like, actually, it's not going to make a big difference to my overall life. My parents are still going to love me. My friends are still going to be there. And almost like counter any sort of bad stories. And that's what Rory McIlroy says he's been doing, is thinking about all the worst case scenarios and then going, actually, it's not as big of a deal as I think it is. And so I would suggest you do that. Firstly, become aware of what these stories are, these beliefs are that you've been holding on to. And then think about the alternative of the actual facts of, like, no, it's not that big of a deal. There's 20 people in the Middlesex squad that will care, and there's 2,000 supporters that will care, but the rest of the world, no one gives a shit. And like, life will go on. And by the time we're playing the next game, everyone has forgotten about this last game. So it's only a moment in time. So I think that, becoming aware of it, and then trying to, whatever we sort of feed grows. And I love the saying, he who says he can and he who says he can't are both usually right. So I think that you'll always have negative stories and negative doubts, or doubts about yourself, and even the world's best do. They have doubts, they have uncertainty, and they use that doubt, those doubts and uncertainty to drive their action, to make them work harder, to get better. But they learn to feed the positive story that I am capable, I'm doing my best, I'm excited to play, I just want to get out there and express myself, and they pair that with what I spoke about earlier, the acceptance that it might not work out, it might not be my day, that it's a hard game, and I might not be the one that has a good result today, but I want to do well. I'm training hard because I want to, and I'm getting better. I am getting better despite the results. And if you feed those stories, well, then they allow you to show up with more freedom. The doubts are still there, but you're not shining the torch on them. You're not looking at them and making them stronger and bigger. You're not lighting the fire underneath them and sort of making it into a big fire. You're sort of quietening those thoughts down, and you're feeding your attention, your energy towards something that sort of helps you show up with more freedom.
And touching on that, we probably didn't use the exact terminology, but everything you've described also comes under the I guess the umbrella of gratitude, right? Just being grateful to be even playing, like in your case, going to Lords and playing, and being in that world or that cocoon of gratitude can also help someone to not feel results driven. So, just being grateful that you have the opportunity to play, or playing alongside with friends, or getting certain opportunities to bat for, state teams or whatever it is, just being in that, cocoon of gratitude, and rather than, being results driven. So I'd like to hear, like, how important is gratitude when it comes to cricket? And do you implement that in your coaching? In what way do you implement that?
Yeah, well, I heard once that gratitude and anxiety come from the same part of the brain. So if you're feeling anxious and you start practicing gratitude, the anxiety disappears. So, like, my personal story with this is, I played so much cricket. I sort of kept playing cricket up until I was 33 or so, and my wife was pregnant with our second child. It was Christmas time, or the season was about to come to its halt over the Christmas period, and my wife sort of sat me down without sort of sitting me down and said, look, I don't want you to keep playing with our second child on the way. It's going to be hard for me at home on a weekend on my own. And I knew that conversation was coming, although I didn't want to sort of admit it. I wanted to keep playing, but I knew that was the right thing to do for my family. And so I spent that sort of couple of weeks over Christmas where we had no cricket, like a bit like a movie, reflecting on my life as a cricketer. And I thought about how it's taken me to the UK, how it's taken me from Alice Springs to Perth and all around the country and different parts of the world. And all my mates have come through cricket, and my whole life has revolved around cricket, and it's given me so many things. And I became very grateful for what cricket has given me. And I sort of really started practicing regularly and thinking about what I was grateful for cricket, and not just what cricket has given me, but being grateful for being healthy, and being grateful for not being in the office on a Saturday, and all these little things that we often forget. And having practiced that for a couple of weeks, I went and played the first game after the Christmas break, and I did well. And the last part of that season ended up being the last competitive cricket I've played was some of the best cricket I've played in my whole career, because I was coming from a place of gratitude and a real positive energy around what cricket is and what I love about the game, as opposed to being focused on the outcome, being focused on getting picked in the next team or staying in the team or my average or all these other things that we get so caught up in. And so I share that story now of like, I've lived through practicing gratitude and sort of focusing on what you're grateful for and what cricket gives you and what just being healthy is like, because some people would like change anything to be able to have legs that work if they're sort of stuck in a wheelchair or whatever. We forget about those things. So it takes away the importance to hit the cricket ball well when you break it down to the fact that you're healthy, you're happy, like life is pretty good. It can take away that anxiety around performance and doing well, and that then can allow you to be more free and play at your best. So it's a real great practice that I think everyone should do, not just in a cricket sense, but in a life sense as well, because you can sort of look around at everyone else, look at all the highlights on social media of someone's doing this, someone's doing that, they've got a better life than me, and then you're going to live a pretty miserable life. But practicing gratitude of just being grateful for little things can really remind you of what you do have and help you live a happier, more content life.
Definitely, yeah, and that the whole idea with cricket and gratitude, like that, the way that you describe gratitude also extends to all aspects of life, right? Like just being grateful of the life you're having and all that kind of stuff can really bring someone out of dark situations and allow them to really stay present and also be really essentially do the best they can and be in that flow state to achieve whatever they need to achieve. And I know you've been so gracious with your time and all, but I'll have last few questions before we wrap up. As doing a lot of coaching and stuff like that as well, like do you use or utilize any aspects, like when it comes to, could be journaling or meditation or sports psychology tools that you impart onto the kids that you teach cricket?
Yeah, absolutely. All of the above. Look, I think meditation is an amazing skill and to help you get present and focus on the present moment, focus your attention on the present moment. And as you said before, batting is meditation. Like when we're out in the middle, we need to be present to perform at our best. We need to be in the moment right here, right now to make good decisions and execute the skills that we've trained. And so meditation is a great sort of training that great way to train that skill of being present, and journaling is amazing to learn from what you've done. I think that, and also set some intentions and set some plans. I have an expression or a saying that experience plus reflection equals learning, and journaling is a great way to reflect on what's happened and therefore learn from what's happened, whether that's a training session or a game. So it's something that I think all athletes should be doing, is working on that mental side of the game, and that's through visualization, visualizing how they want to be and not just the outcome, but how they want to feel and how they want to show up as a person and be the human they want to be before they're the cricketer. Meditation for getting present, mindfulness, just sitting, not necessarily meditating and shutting your eyes and focusing on your breath, but just being present and mindfulness about observing what's going on around you and feeling things in your body, and then journaling to reflect on what's happened. So therefore, really, really powerful sort of mental tools or techniques that I'd certainly work with athletes with and encourage anyone listening or watching to sort of get into.
I know with cricket mentoring, you have a program called the 6 Pillars of Success, and I'm sure you discuss all the stuff you talked about today at length when you're doing those programs in particular. But when it comes to, because I've said this literally on every podcast, but I did a training session. Actually, I did a coaching session with Oliver Peake down at Geelong, and he said something interesting. And he was like, I think it was 18 or 17 when I did that session with him. Incredibly intelligent, you could tell. He just kind of broke down cricket as from strategy perspective, a psychological perspective, and also a technical perspective. And this isn't the case of batting. And if we're using these three metrics, what percentage out of 100 would you give for each one when it comes to being the best batsman you can be? So, for example, would you say, I don't know, when it comes to batting, 70% is maybe psychological, 20% is strategic, and 10% is technique? Like, what percentages would you give for three of those components?
It's such a tricky question because I think your technique is the foundation of your game. And if you have flaws in your technique, you can't get your bat down in a straight line, if your head falls over, if you sort of square up, whatever those things are, you'll always have a limit to how far you can go and how good you can be, because it's the moment you face bowlers that have higher speed or have skills to move the ball, you will be found out. So technique is incredibly important to play at the higher levels. To play at lower levels, far less important when the bowling's slower and the ball doesn't move as much. I think understanding strategy is hugely important. And I sort of say in my 6 pillars of success presentations and workshops, I say that if you have player A and player B, and player A is more skilled but doesn't understand the game very well and doesn't understand strategy very well, and you have player B who's less skilled, less sort of, I don't like the word talent, but less skilled, but they understand the game really well and they know how to apply their skills to certain situations, I think player B is going to be far more successful. They're going to manage risk more. They're going to understand the opening bowler's on. I'm going to get off strike, whereas player A might think, oh, the opening bowler's on. I'm going to hit him over his head for 6. I think player B is going to be more successful. So I think understanding strategy is hugely important. And then probably the most important piece is getting your mind right. If your mind is distracted and if you're thinking the wrong things, you're not going to be able to make good decisions and execute your skills to the best of your ability, whether that's as a bowler, a batter, or any other sport for that matter. So look, I think they all play a huge, important part. And without any of those parts, if we went 50% technical, 50% tactical, 0% mental, or 50% psychological, mental, 50% tactical, 0% technical, you're not going to be successful. And you mentioned our 6 pillars of success framework. We sort of say technical, tactical, mental, emotional, physical, and lifestyle. And we say that for an athlete to be at their best, you need to be working on yourself and developing all 6 pillars. Because if you're developing yourself in 5 of those, you're leaving something off the table that you could be working on, could be better at. You're not going to be the best you can be. You're not going to perform at the best you can be. Now, the lifestyle pillar is not so much about performance, but it's about all your habits, values, and behaviors that dictate whether you can get to your best. Things like going to bed early, things like hydrating, things like journaling, those sort of habits and behaviors that help you become your best and unlock all the skills you've sort of trained over time. So, look, I can't really give a percentage, honestly. I think that they're all really, really important for different reasons.
No, that's fair enough. And touching on season 2011 to 2012, you actually played in the Friends Live T20. So I'll kind of ask in a general sense because you play against, incredible players. So, for example, Ravi Bopara, Tim Southey. You also played against Kane Williamson, Murali, which is incredible, Trescothick, Kieran Pollard, Joss Butler. So against, quality players. So what was that experience like that season, and who do you feel like impressed you the most in that particular tournament?
Yeah, it was amazing. And again, I was like this cricket nuffy, cricket fan, watching all these guys on TV, and getting to play against them was really cool and really surreal. And having some England players and excellent players in my team was really cool. And I was a bit in awe at times. But when you get in the contest, you're trying to compete, you're trying to do your best. But I've got a Murali story, which I do share, is like I faced 4 balls in a T20 and I didn't hit any. He sort of bowled me, like I was batting with a guy called Jamie Dalrymple, who had played for England, a really good player. And I think he sort of reverse swept Murali for the first ball for 4, and then he got a 1, and then I was 4 balls left in the over. And middle overs of a T20, I was, I think, starting my innings on a handful of runs maybe, and he bowled first ball, he bowled, I think, the Doosra, and I didn't pick it, and I played down the line, it spun past my outside edge, didn't hit it. So I thought, oh God, I don't know which way it's going. I'm going to sweep here. I have to sweep. And I wasn't a great sweeper at the time. I went on to become quite a good sweeper, but at the time I was still learning it. But I thought, I don't know which way it's spinning. I've got to sweep. So he bowled me another one. It was an off spinner, outside off. I went down, tried to sweep it, hit me on the pad, bit of an LB shout, not out, outside the line. Again, ball 2, didn't hit it. So I thought, oh God, I can't sweep him. He's getting bounced and it's sort of, spinning so much. So I went back to playing, sort of the plan was to play him with a straight bat. Third ball was a deucer again. I think I tried to play it down the ground, missed it. And then fourth ball, I decided to sweep again. And again, I think maybe going down leg, I missed it. And I faced 4 balls of Murali, one of the game's greatest ever, and I didn't hit any in a T20. So, yeah, that was an interesting sort of moment and story. Not one I'm super proud of, but one I can now laugh about and say, yeah, look, he was just too good for me.
I mean, I don't know how many people in the world gets to face, one of the best bowlers in history. So that's definitely something to be grateful of. Back to our theme of the show, but that's crazy. And I actually, a lot of people I've had on actually talked about facing Morley, and they said, like, I think it was Adam Crossway, Will Persisto. They talked about hearing the fizz out of his hand when it comes to because of so much spin that he's putting onto the ball that you can actually hear the fizz. Did you happen to hear that as well?
Absolutely. You could hear it zzz on the way down. Yeah, it was incredible. It was really incredible and quite intimidating as it's coming down.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I guess as a last question as well, as a batsman for yourself, like what was your process when it comes to in between deliveries, or like also when the ball's running in or watching out of the hand to pick up length early? What process did you have?
Well, I think at some point when I was playing I think it was about when I was playing for Middlesex in my first or second year. I sort of speaking to a few other players, and I knew the importance of it, but I didn't fully understand the importance of it. But I started this mantra of saying, win the ball, win this ball, win this ball, win this ball. And I say that like I had to give my mind a focus, because if I was just blank, like thoughts would come into my mind. And so my process was that I would sort of, and this is what I now teach, I'd sort of play a shot, I'd sort of reflect on it, I'd learn from it. And then I'd try and let go of that thought of what I just reflected on and I've learned. I'd try and sort of store that into the back of my mind. And it might be a technical thing or a tactical thing. Oh, yeah, he's swinging it back, or a head fell over, I need to get more balanced, or whatever. Then I would walk away towards square leg. I would sort of look into the distance, whether that's a game that's going on the other field over there, or a plane flying over the top, or whatever it was. I just observe without much thought, without any judgment, just to try and conserve energy. Then I'd come back in. I would sort of I'd reset myself. So we talk about this now as the 4 R's framework: reflect, relax, reset, refocus. So this is the third R. I'd reset my body. I'd look at the field and see if there's any field changes or whatever. Reset, get my grip right, get my feet set, tap, 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 look up, and get my head going down the wicket as the last thing. And then as the bowler's running in, halfway through, I'd sort of say to myself, game on. And that was a moment of like switching on, a moment to trigger myself into the contest. And then I'd say, win this ball, win this ball, win this ball, win this ball. And I'd say it over and over and over so that I didn't give my mind any time to bring another thought in. And when I followed that process closely, or I did it well, I would often do well as a player. When I got distracted or I didn't follow that process, my mind was on other things. That's when I'd make mistakes. So that was my process. And that's sort of the 4 R's that we've now sort of developed and we teach is this: reflect, learn from what's happened, relax, switch off, let your mind be free and conserve energy, reset your body and start to come back into the moment mentally, and then refocus your mind. And you only need to refocus your mind for those last 4 or 5 seconds as the bowler's running in. You don't need to be fully focused as the bowler's at the top of their mark. You're just trying to be dialed in as the bowler's letting go of the ball in the moments before that. So, look, that was my process. And almost always when I got out, I could say it was a mental lapse. It was the fact that I wasn't fully focused. There might be a technical error, but the technical error was caused by my mind not being fully focused and present in that moment. When I would almost certainly make a good decision and execute my skills. So I think that is hugely, hugely important. And so often we diagnose the technical error or the physical thing. We say it was a technical error, your back leg collapse, or you're too early on the ball. But I think so much of it is to do with getting our mind focused. When our mind is focused, we generally are able to execute a skill that we've trained a lot. So, we don't always need to diagnose the technical error. We should be also often thinking about what's happening in the mind to make that mistake.
Yeah, definitely. And touching on that real quick as well, like a lot of players, they get into better positions when they're more confident. And so sometimes, as you said, like they diagnose a technical error, or you didn't put your front foot in this way, or your bat was coming on an angle, whatever it is. It's actually like makes a big difference where it's like, oh, if they were confident and felt like they were on, then they would that technical error wouldn't show. So, it's about kind of to the root cause, which is, it can be psychological, right? So I think that's something to be aware of. And unfortunately, a lot of cricket, sometimes like the coaching from last 20 years have been a bit outdated or backdated or outdated essentially because they diagnose it from a purely technical, but for yourself, you're doing a lot of works in that sense. And I'm sure you're changing the narrative on that front as well. And on top of that, like win the ball is a really interesting cue because it makes you kind of play with intensity in that ball and stay present, right? So it's not always about, obviously, I'm sure you're not thinking about blasting the ball for 6 every ball. It's more so like even when you play with a front foot defense, you play it like you mean it, like you've really won that block and made the bowler feel a certain way. You know what I mean? It's like, you can't get through my defenses today. You played with intensity. So that kind of feeds to that earlier point regarding playing and staying present essentially. So I know you've been so generous with your time. Thank you so much for coming to the show. Literally, there's so much we could talk about. Like this could be a 5-hour podcast, honestly. But I don't know if you had any sort of final thoughts before we wrap up the show.
No, look, I'm sitting here absolutely sweating. It's so hot in the UK at the moment. I've got my daughter's towel and wiping sweat off my face. But look, I've really enjoyed it. As you said, I could talk about this stuff forever. I sort of, I'm very passionate about it because it's all the stuff I wish I knew when I was younger and I think would have made a difference in my career. So my final thing, I guess, is just for players, for humans to become aware of themselves and understand their thoughts, understand their emotions, and how that, as a human, impacts how you perform as a cricketer. And if you can understand yourself as a person, as a human, and understand what state you need to get into whether that's you need to fire up and get in the contest and be really fired up like a Michael Jordan or a Shane Warne, or you need to be more calm and relaxed and connected to the people around you, which was more like what I needed. The sooner you can understand that, the sooner you can go and give yourself the best chance of performing at your best by understanding your thoughts and your emotions and what state you need to be in. So I think just, like if any young cricketers, just keep showing up, keep putting in the work. If you love what you do, you'll get good at it. If you get good at it, you can keep enjoying it. You will achieve things in the game, and try not to be so focused on the outcome that it takes away your enjoyment, because life's short. And if you're doing something a lot and you're not enjoying it, then what's the point, really? So, thanks for having me on. As you said, maybe we'll have another session at some point and go deeper into other things. But, really enjoyed it.
No, definitely. We'll definitely reach out to you again for a second episode. So I appreciate your time, and a lot of gems shared on the show. And definitely when it comes to cricket mentoring, I'll put all the links in the show notes as well, and everyone can check out everything. I'm sure all the listeners already know about cricket mentoring anyway, but I'll make sure everything's in the show notes. So thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If you wanted to check us out, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple iTunes, we're all on the main podcast channel. So check us out. We're also on Instagram, TikTok, we're on YouTube Shorts as well. So, share our content, like, subscribe, and support us the best as you can. So for our special guest, Tom Scollay, wish you all the best. This is Tanzim signing off. Thank you very much.
Thanks.